Today on our 2012 Forest River Georgetown XL motorhome, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the Lippert Components Kwikee 25 Series Triple Electric Step. That's going to be part number LC3658373. Having electric steps in your RV is a really nice thing. Whenever we need to get in, we can open the door and our steps should come out, but then at the same time, whenever we close the door, they should retract. As you can see, ours are having a little bit of an issue. They keep binding up on us and it's a really intermittent operation. Our new Kwikee 25 Series steps are going to make it a lot easier for us to get in and out of our motorhome because they're going to operate. Whenever we open the door, our steps will extend down, and then whenever we close the door, they'll retract back in. And you see they're going to have that nice smooth operation. And the way they're going to work is they're going to have a two-part switch. One is going to be on the outside of the door right here, which is going to have a magnet that'll signal the inside switch. And the inside switch is going to be mounted onto the inside of the door jamb, and it'll find that signal and let the steps know whether to retract or extend out. Now our steps are also going to have a manual switch so we can turn the steps off if we'd like to keep them out all the time, so we don't have to worry about them going back in when we close the door. Now our motorhome already had a switch built in, so we didn't wire it up, but if we turn the switch off, it'll cut the power off to our steps, and then when we close the door, the steps will stay extended out. Our steps are going to have a lot of built-in safety features, so in case we forget to turn that switch back on, and when we close the door to drive away in our motorhome, the steps are going to automatically retract as soon as we put the key into the on position. Now also, as another added safety feature, our steps are going to extend the first time that we open the door after the key is in the on position. That way we don't have to worry about falling out of the door. And sometimes whenever we're parked close to a curb and we go to open our door, our steps may come in contact with that curb. Luckily though, there's going to be a control unit on the motor which is going to prevent any kind of overheating and too much amperage draw, and it'll actually cut power, so once there's enough pressure on the steps, it's going to stop extending them or retracting them. But keep in mind, if you do open the door and you're really close to the steps, hitting your leg is not going to be enough pressure, so you still want to be mindful whenever they're retracting or extending. Our steps are even going to have a built-in light. It's going to be an amber light underneath, so even in those low light situations, it is going to illuminate that first step so we can have confidence whether we're entering or exiting our motorhome. Our steps themselves are going to have this textured material, so we're going to have lots of traction. Make sure we're not going to slip even when the steps are wet. On top of that, they're going to have this reflective coating on each step. So again, in low light situations or anything like that, it's going to be very visible so we know exactly where we're stepping. Now our steps are going to be made out of steel and they'll have a black powder coat finish on them, so they are going to resist rust and corrosion, and they're going to hold up to all the elements, including all the road debris that's going to be coming up from underneath. Now the steps themselves are going to be 24 inches wide by 11 inches deep, so we'll have plenty of room to make sure we have a secure footing. In between each step is going to be a 7-inch drop or rise. That way it's going to be a natural step whenever we're getting in. Now as far as the mounting dimensions, our step height is going to be 19.5 inches, and that's going to be from the very top of our mounting bracket to the very bottom of our lowest step. Now our mounting bracket dimensions, meaning whenever the steps are fully collapsed and what needs to fit into the hole here, is going to be 25.5 inches wide, all the way from one side to the other, and it's going to be 9 5/8 inches tall, and it's going to be 11 3/8 inches deep. So keep those measurements in mind whenever you're looking for steps to fit the height as well as the width and depth to fit your RV. Our steps are going to have a 300-pound weight capacity, so we know they're going to be really strong and durable. Our Kwikee 25 Series steps are going to come in a few different configurations. They're all going to give you that 3-step platform and have the same dimensions, but They're going to have some that are going to be only the step itself with no motor, no switches, or no control unit, but also full complete assemblies. So whatever you need, we have something that's going to work with your RV. Now, installing our steps is going to be a pretty straightforward process. We're going to have pre-drilled holes all along the bottom that we can use to match up to the frame on our RV. Just keep in mind that the hardware is not included, and you will need to pick up some bolts to get everything bolted in. And the solid steel drive rods on our motor are going to make sure that it's going to be extra strong and durable and last for many years to come. And as far as the wiring goes, we're going to have a simple 4-pole connector here. It's going to plug directly into our motorhome. Now, if you're replacing them, you might already have this style connector on there, but if not, our kit is going to come with the other end, so we can just use a few butt connectors and wire it in place. Then we'll just have a simple ground wire that we'll have to connect and wire up our door switch. So now we've seen our steps and gone over some of the benefits and features, let's show you how to get them installed. To begin our installation, you're going to want to open up the door so that the steps can come out. That we'll have a little bit easier access when we go to remove them. Now, if you have a manual override switch, you want to make sure that the power is turned off so that the steps won't retract when we close the door. If you don't have a manual override switch or you can't get them to stay out, you just want to make sure that the door stays open so that we can get underneath and disconnect everything. To begin our installation, you're going to want to come underneath your steps to where your motor and all the wires are. Now, currently all of our wires are still connected and we have a lot of zip ties holding everything in place. So I'm just taking a pair of cutters and I'm going to go through and cut all the zip ties so we can sort out all the wires and disconnect everything needed. Now, our steps are going to have a couple connectors on there, so we'll go ahead and loosen them up, pull on the tab and disconnect it. You want to make sure you follow all the wires up coming off the step and disconnect them everywhere where there's a plug. And then we'll just have one more connection as far as electrical. We're going to have this ground wire that's going to have a bolt going into the frame right here. So we can grab a 10mm socket and we'll pull the bolt out. You want to make sure you hold on to the bolt or the self-tapping screw because we're going to be reusing this for our new ground wire. Now, the steps themselves are going to be held in by 4 bolts and nuts. We're going to have one on each corner. Now, our new steps are not going to come with the hardware to bolt it in. So you either want to hold on to this hardware or get new hardware to replace it. Before you fully remove your steps or even start to take those bolts out, you want to make sure that you have some kind of support holding the steps up because they are going to be rather heavy and we don't want them falling down. So I'm going to grab a 9/16 socket and an extension so I can reach the bolt. And then I'm going to take a 9/16 wrench and come on top of the steps. And I'm going to loosen up each nut. Again, you just want to be extremely careful, and you might want to leave 1 or 2 in there just loose so that we can grab an extra set of hands if needed. All right, now that all the bolts are removed, we'll lower our jack stand. And with an extra set of hands, we're going to move our steps out of the way so we can safely get them out of there. And since this hardware is a little old, with a little bit of rust on there, we're going to go ahead and replace it. So we're going to be using a 3/8 bolt and a flat washer to go through each mounting location. We're going to go ahead and put those in there now. That way when we go to get our step, we can lift it up and have the bolts drop down through. It'll be a lot easier rather than trying to support it, get the hardware from the top, and then put the washer and nut on the bottom. Now when we get our new steps, they're going to be collapsed when we get them out of the box. Now on the back side, we're going to have that same 4-pin connector and a ground wire. Now in order to help us get our steps in easier, we're going to want to have them extended. So we can grab the pigtail that comes with our kit, and it's just going to have 4 wires coming out of the back. A red, a yellow, a brown, and a white. and this is going to plug directly into the pigtail that's already mounted on the steps. Now what we need to do is power and ground our steps so that we can extend them out. So we're going to need to either have a car battery, the battery from our motorhome, or some kind of power source where we can send power and ground to it so that we can make sure that the steps are fully extended, so it'll be a lot easier to get the hardware in place. So I'm going to take my ground wire, I'm going to hook it up to my jump box to the negative cable, and then I'll take my pigtail end, and if you haven't already, you're going to pull the insulation off of the red wire. Then we'll get a 12-volt power source. In this case, we're using a jump box. I'm going to hook the red wire up to the positive cable, and when we turn our jump box on, the steps are going to extend out. So you want to make sure you have on a nice steady surface so that it's not going to be moving around too much on you. So you're going to want to have your steps fully extended. Now we did find whenever we were applying power, it did only want to extend a little bit, but what we did was we turned our steps upside down so there was no pressure on the bottom platform here, so it moved a lot easier. Again, you just want to be careful whenever you're doing that because the steps are rather large and they are going to extend pretty far out, so you want to make sure you have a nice stable surface when you're doing it. Now with an extra set of hands, we're going to bring our new steps in and we're going to line up the mounting holes with the studs that are coming through the bottom here. Now once we get our bolts going through the holes, it's not a bad idea to put a jack stand back under there to help support it. We'll take a flat washer and a lock nut and we'll secure it in each one of the spots, making sure that we get it at least hand tight so we don't have to worry about the steps falling on us. With all of our hardware in place and our steps supported, we can come back and tighten it all up. So we'll grab our 9/16 socket and wrench and we'll hold the bolt on top while we tighten the nut up on the bottom side. Now the pigtail and the harness that's coming out of our motorhome, we can hook these directly up and then we would need to hardwire it into our motorhome. However, our motorhome already has an existing plug, so we don't need to hardwire it in. But if you do need to wire yours in, you're just going to connect the wires in the same fashion on whatever different plug you have. Just get some butt connectors and we can connect it in. But for now, we'll just plug our harness directly into that plug. With our harness connected, we can take our ground wire and we can put it back in place. Now on the back of our steps here, we are going to have one more connection. It's going to have a purple wire and a little bullet connector on it. Now this is an optional connection because whenever our steps are extended, we are going to have our light come on, and when they retract, it'll turn off automatically. But this is going to be if you want to hook up your step light to a porch light, so whenever you have your porch lights come on, this will come on as well. So you just find your porch light circuit and tap it into there. However, we're not going to be doing that in this application. Now, more than likely, if you're replacing your steps, the switch that's going to be in there is actually going to be reversed. So when the door is closed, our steps are going to be out, and when we open the door, they're going to retract. Now, fortunately, our steps are going to come with a switch, so we can switch them out. So we're going to have two separate parts to our door switch. We're going to have one that's going to be mounted inside the door jamb here, and we're going to want to peel that off. If there are screws holding it in place, you want to remove those, but a lot of these are just mounted directly to the door jamb using double-sided foam tape. So you can get a flat blade screwdriver, and we're just going to pry it away until it disconnects from the door all the way. Now you can see we're going to have a couple wires on there. We want to go ahead and remove those. Now we don't necessarily have to keep the terminals on there because we're not going to be reusing those. So we'll cut the ends of our wires and we can remove the switch. Now on the door itself, we're also going to have the other part of the switch, and this is what's going to activate the steps to let them know whether they're closed or open. So we're going to want to remove this as well. Again, just carefully take a flat blade screwdriver and pry it away from the door so we can peel it all the way off. We'll pull the cover off, and this one is actually held on by 2 screws, so we can just pull those 2 screws out. Now the 2 wires that we cut earlier, we're going to want to push these back down into the motorhome, but you want to make sure that you can access them from underneath before you push them in, because our new switch is going to have plenty of wire length on it. So if we make the connection up here, we may not be able to get the butt connectors through the hole. But if you have enough room, you can make the connection up here and then shove all the extra wire underneath. But it's very limited right here, so we're going to push our wires in and then reach underneath to find out where they are. Now our switch wires came out right by this insulation, so you may need to pull it back a little bit so you can reach your wires and pull them through. Switch wires are going to be pre-stripped on each end. So we'll pull the little bit of insulation off, and we'll take our other 2 wires, and we're going to strip back the end of those. Then we can take a butt connector. Now these aren't included in our kit, but you can find them here at etrailer.com. We're going to crimp our butt connector on one end of the wire that was from our old switch. And then we'll take one of the wires from our new switch. Now they're both black wires. It's not going to matter which way we put them in. But since this is a little bit thinner wire, I'm going to fold it in half. That way that butt connector has a little bit more to grab onto. We'll take one of them, put it in our butt connector, and we'll crimp it down. We're going to do the same thing for the other one, just connecting the 2 other wires. Now that we have the connections made, we can come back up to where the switch is, and we're going to remove the backing off of the double-sided tape. We'll push the excess wires back in, and we're going to want to line up the large piece with the edge of the door. And we'll just press it against there. And if you want, there are a few screw holes in the back to where we can actually screw our switch in place, but it's going to hold on just fine with that double-sided tape. Now in the outside door, we're going to have another part of our switch, just like the other one, to mount up. And again, it's going to have 2 holes, so we can screw it in place, or we can use that double-sided tape. So we'll remove the backing. And this time you want to make sure that large piece again is towards the outside of the door so it'll line up with the other one. And we're going to get it roughly in about the spot that we have the other one. So make sure that sticks nice and good. So you want to make sure the power's on, and we can close our door and we see that the steps are going to retract. And just to make sure everything's working properly, we'll open the door and we can see that they're coming out as well as the light coming on. So now would be a good time to go ahead and tidy up any loose wires underneath, bundle them up, and make sure that everything's going to be out of the way and not get caught in anything. That'll finish up your look at the Lippert Components Kwikee 25 Series Triple Electric Step, part number LC3658373 on our 2012 Forest River Georgetown XL motorhome.